What is going on? Comic fam, it's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I'm welcoming back to the show Tony Fleecs. Welcome back, my friend.
The other bearded comic bro. I'm
Right?
looking in this split screen. I look like the bearded comic dad. I feel like
Hey, I'm getting
a
some salt there, Ben. So I'm
little
I'm
bit.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Got like an upside down Reed Richards going.
Right? I
Yeah.
love it. I'm gonna embrace that now. Well, if you are not familiar with Tony's work, I think I first time I had you on was talking Stray Dogs, and then like a year ago we were talking Local Man and Feral, and Uncanny Valley was just about to come out. And after we talked, then you get nominated for an Eisner with Local Man. Then just recently, Uncanny Valley gets nominated for an Eisner. So I'm not saying like people should talk to me, but
Yeah. Oh, I see. I wasn't sure where that was going, but yes, I feel like
I
you
mean
are a good.
it's not your work that you wrote. It's the bump.
Well, let's see. Who have you talked to that I'm nominated against? Let's see if the luck holds. Have you
Uh-oh.
talked to Scott
Uh
Snyder and Nick Cotta?
who I have not talked to Scott Snyder, so
Have you talked to Kelly Thompson or Hayden Sherman?
I have talked to Kelly.
Tough. What about
Yeah.
the pedestrian? What about Sean Van Gorman?
I
Have you
had
talked to
Sean
them?
and Joey on the show too.
Shit. Well, this is not a sure thing anymore.
Uh-oh, dang it. All
All
right,
right.
well, I will
Well,
not reach out to Scott, so we'll be
even the playing field. I'm thinking the odds are good, no matter who it is, unless it is Scott Snyder, which it probably will be. That you're the golden goose.
uh,
The goose that laid the golden egg.
You've also now got a new comic from Marvel coming out thing.
Hmm.
Like, so like just and you've been on a book tour with like you've been super busy. So
I
just
have been super busy. Yeah.
let's talk some comics here. So let's hit into Uncanny Valley real quick because you're wrapping up the series, right? With the 10th issue
Yeah.
coming out here in July. Um, how is that kind of like feel for you like when you're closing up kind of this run with Uncanny Valley of now you're getting the Eisner nomination, like is it kind of feel like bittersweet? Is it kind of just like this is a great combination of we're ending it on a good note? Like where are you kind of at with all of this stuff?
Yeah, it's sort of all those things. We got that nomination right as like we were still sort of doing like last tweaks, like
Hmm.
to tweak the color on this or moving lettering around and stuff. But I was done with the book, and Dave had just sort of turned in his last pages. Um, and then the editor called and told us that we got nominated for the Eisner, emailed us. And that was very nice. It did feel like a nice sort of like cherry on top.
Yeah.
We were very proud of this book, and we were happy to have made it, and it was bittersweet just being finished. Like me and Dave love working together so much, and we'll definitely work together again. But sort of having this big project finished and sort of done with was definitely bittersweet because it was always fun to, sit around and write a script and come up with like, oh, it's gonna be so cool when Dave draws this. But sort of like the other side of that is there's still I still am looking forward to the enjoyment of um you guys seeing it, like
Yeah.
readers seeing it, and the second trade comes out, and then Boom always puts together a nice hardcover. So like there's a lot of we're going to get a lot of hopefully reactions to it, which I'm very excited about because we put so much of ourselves in it, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into that book. It was not an easy book to make.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, it was real nice to get that recognition at the end, but um, and having it finished, and then also knowing that we can look forward to this last issue is a barn burner. And so it's exciting to sort of have that out there that like I think it comes out like 2 weeks before Comic-Con. So hopefully, the hardcores that have been reading it in issues the whole time will be
Yeah.
able to hopefully I'd love to see some of them out there and talk to them and let them find out what they thought and stuff.
Yeah. I'm excited to see just how it wraps up because this whole I remember when you were on last year telling me about like you got to check this out like and just a whole premise of the crossover of the human world with the animated world and to see like the little bits of like humor that you throw in of like these like cartoon moments of like in mixed in like a real life character. I'm like, this has got to be so fun to get these pages back from Dave when you after you've written something like and just to see what he does with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a surprise every time because he's definitely he's stretching and doing stuff that I've never seen him do before because he usually just draws so realistic and it's always sort of like people like write these sort of gritty like brown and gray stories for him. And so to get this artwork from him that's just so colorful, the real world stuff and the cartoon world stuff, and just have it feel be so full of life and so full of emotion. It's been really rewarding for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Is is your approach different because like, with Uncanny Valley wrapping up here with the 10th issue in July, now you have something like Feral, which seems like it could, I don't know where the end date is for y'all, but it seems like y'all could just go on forever with this story. Like it is a vast, wide spanning universe that you've created.
Yeah, but I mean, the plan is to go on for a long, long time. We've talked initially about 60 issues, but the hope is we get to 60 and and the numbers are there, and it's just like we'll just keep going. We have a really good time making this book. It can be stressful at times, doing a monthly, ongoing series. Nobody really does them, and
Right.
the way we made this one, it's not hard to see why because it's very work intensive. There's two artists on it and they're both working really hard all the time, and then I do thumbnails for the book, so it's like there's three artists. uh so it's like the process is ever moving, somebody's already always working on something. Like today, I told you before we got on, I just put Tone Rodriguez on a plane. He's one of the artists on the book, and he was out here for like a few weeks just cranking on the book. Just we were putting together issue 15 and now we're started on 16 and working on covers for 17, and so we're just like intensive all day long comic book making on that book. Uncanny Valley is a much different situation. The Marvel stuff is a much different situation,
Yeah.
even from that. But it's like that one, I just turn in a script, and then somebody else handles all the hard parts, and then and then a month or two later, I get artwork back, and then we figure out how to make sure the letters fit on it the right way.
Yeah.
But yeah, Farrell is a beast, and I'm working on another one that is similarly work intensive, and I feel like after once those two are done, well, I mean, Farrell's ongoing, but like once I sort of, I'm not doing anything else like this because it is just so all the time, so relentless. And then I'll do like I wrote a Marvel thing last night, and it's like I've worked on the outline for a few weeks or whatever, and then when the time comes, it's just a couple days, 2, 3 days, and the script is done, and then and then it's sort of out of your hair for a while. And I never have that with my creator-owned books. But on the other hand, the reward is much greater on the creator-owned books when they work too. Like a Feral, it sells well, and the trades will sell well, and it's sort of that will continue to pay out for years to come,
Yeah. No, I
hopefully.
know with like, ongoings, like you have to kind of somewhat wait and see how the numbers go and like is it something consistent? With Stray Dogs, it felt like you always knew you were going to wrap up that story with the story you wanted to tell. Did you know from the get-go that like you were going to try and expand Feral as long as you could? Or did it kind of like the initial reaction was like, okay, now we can really expand from this? Or was it from day one?
Well, yeah, it could have. I mean, the plan from day one was to make an ongoing series,
Okay.
and was to make sort of like something that was the opposite of Stray Dogs. Just hopefully not in success, but in like Stray Dogs takes place in a closed house. This takes place in an open world. Stray Dogs is dogs, obviously. There's cats. Stray Dogs has one main uh, antagonist, and Feral, it's like everybody's out to get you all the time. So we were definitely looking at not just doing it longer because Stray Dogs was contained, but also doing it as different as possible, just because we didn't want to just repeat ourselves and just
Right.
keep doing this. Like the premise, the to look at it from the outside is so close that you don't want to for it to be the same on the inside too.
Yeah. Well, and it is like you said, you have such a vast array of characters that even now in the beginning of your books, you're listing like, here's your 10 characters that you know off the bat of,
Yeah.
and like for you, is it harder for you to kind of like get your pieces of figuring out where you want to go with stuff, or easier with something like this because you can take it in any direction you want to. You can create new environments instantly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little easier, and I sort of miss the hard work part of a Stray Dogs, where because that was my first thing, and because I had nothing to fall back on. There was no, um, hadn't written any other books that people would be like, "This is great. We gotta," like if Stray Dogs didn't perform, it's not like they would be like, "Well, I read his couple My Little Pony issues, and they weren't shit either." Uh, but so on that one, I really like labored over the outline and the structure and beating it out like um, in the 3 act structure and then breaking it into like 5 act, like really
Yep.
doing the math on it. Peter David just died this week as we're recording this, and uh, I'm like a devotee of his writing for comics book, and specifically, he's got this structure part that looks like it's out of like a highlights magazine. Like it looks like it's for children, and it's published by the same way. Like, well, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Ways is pretty much like a textbook. Like it reads like that, but this one
Yeah.
was like it's a little more fun. It's got like stars and like stickers on it and stuff, but it is like a perfect here's how to break down your 3 act structure. And I remember making Stray Dogs and having that book like open next to me, as
Mm.
I'm outlining, just going like, this happens here, this happens here, this is where we got to do something really bad. And then, so on Feral, it's a little more intuitive where I have like a overarching, like, here's the story we're telling, here's what this is about, and here's what this cat's deal is, and this cat's, and this cat's. But then it's like we have like signposts, like we're gonna get to this thing, and then we're gonna get to this thing, and this story happens, but they're not all mapped out as intricately as Stray Dogs was.
Hmm.
So
Well, and
it's different in that way too.
yeah. Well, and what I love is, you get to have these different environments, right? Like you start off right in the woods, and then you have a creepy house and, dealing with crazy cat lady kind of things like that. And then you're always being able to have the environment help tell the story as well as introducing us to new characters all along this whole journey, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, we did so like in the first arc, um, we we sort of lost characters faster than we added them, right?
Yeah.
Like it was by design, it was like we want to set up the stakes of this and let people know that like these just because these cats are adorable doesn't mean that like anyone's safe here. And so for the last couple of arcs, we've been more in like a building where, if this is the sort of thing where cats are in danger, and if it's so silly to talk about cats in danger. So for listeners, no real cats have ever been harmed by
In the
me,
making of this book.
Indiana Feral. But you got to build up a cast, and you got to really make people invested in them, and sort of like tell their stories and have them have different stories, so that when you get into these situations, when you put them in these situations, that there's real stakes, and that
Mhm.
people are concerned that they all make it out. And you also, like cynically, you want to have enough that some of them won't make it out,
Right.
and you're sort of like, building up grist for the mill sometimes.
Yeah. This book's been out enough, so I'm sure you've gotten, to talk to fans at conventions and, online and things like this. Do you get more pushback from people because it's cats that are dying than like if it was a human, like in a zombie apocalypse, like Walking Dead? Because I feel like that is always a thing in a movie. Like thousands of humans can die in like an alien attack, but if the dog does,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess so. I don't have too much to compare it to. Like we kill people in Local Man, and to your point, nobody has ever been like, "Oh, I don't, I
right,
can't believe how well did Inga,"
right.
But I do hear about Victor or Jonas all the time. So I guess it is more. But I also think at a certain point, like if they're reading the book, they've sort of signed on for it.
Right.
Like if they read Stray Dogs and then they picked up Feral, they're just like, all right, I know this is going to hurt my heart sometimes, but these people are delivering, like a like an artisan handcrafted comic book that is tailor made to hurt my heart and to sort of like keep me engaged and hopefully leave you on these sort of like cliffhangers in the way that like a Robert Kirkman or like a Brian K. Vaughan would do, where when I would put down a Why the Last Man
Mhm.
or a Walking Dead, it would be like, oh, I cannot wait to read the next one. That what a crazy ending.
Yep. Well, and that's you're doing a great job of that in Feral because before wrapping up here, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read the next one because the way you end it, like there's you do a really good job, and so kudos to your what you've done in the past of crafting this knowledge of how to create and write comics because there's enough story being told that you go, okay, I want to read the next one like instantly, because there's these cliffhangers that you go or like what or those moments where you go, what's going on with this cat? Like I need to figure this out. So
Yeah.
kudos to you and the team then, because it's been
Oh,
great
thank
and it's
you.
been like that throughout the book.
Well, that's so nice to hear, man. Yeah, we love it. It's been different from Stray Dogs as well because Stray Dogs came out during COVID, and so it was, like aside from the death and destruction, we talked about this before, but it's like you could not have a better uh environment to launch a comic book. Like everybody's at home, they're all just talking about stuff, and then they discover this thing. And so like the affirmation that we got from Stray Dogs was so overblown. And so, like we would just talk about it. People would just be like, reach out, can we talk to you about this? Or, oh, I loved it when you did this. And so Feral, because it's an ongoing, at a certain point, we get like one or two reviews, or we get, like people don't mention the issue for, like used to just be like tweets would pop off all the time. So it's it's interesting being in the place where we're in sort of like story wise and creative wise, we're not in cruise control, but the readers, they're just like, oh, this is a book I read, I pick it up, and so it is nice to hear that it's working for you like that, because we're sort of in like a in an echo chamber just talking about it with ourselves and
Well,
and waiting to be at like a convention or whatever and hear about stuff. But
it makes sense. So, as someone, that reviews comics and things like this and hops on review shows, a lot of times people want talk about issue one of the series, but then after a while they're like, what do I say about the thing that I've loved that I've hyped up for the past three, four,
yeah,
five months?
what do you say about Saga?
Yeah.
Saga comes out and you're just like, well, here we are again, still good. Like
It doesn't suck. So like kudos, like it still is
yeah.
good. So I get it.
Yeah, what would you say about Spawn if you were reviewing Spawn every month for the past 30 years, or?
I'm sure someone is out there doing that, and so I'd be curious
Hope
to
so.
see what it is. So, well, we've mentioned it a couple times. You're dipping your toe into the Marvel world here. You've got the thing. This seems like this is the summer of Fantastic Four for sure over at Marvel. How did you get connected with writing the thing?
I'm not exactly sure how the editor uh like found me, but I know he's like he likes my work. I know my friend Pornsack is friends with the editor Darren Shan at Marvel, and Pornsack's been very cool about like we're buddies, we hang out, we're both LA guys, and we'll go get dinner sometime and sort of just like dish and talk comics and stuff. And he's always like, well, how come you're not, how come you're not doing like DC stuff? Or how come you're, and I'm just like, I have no idea. Like I make these weird books about dogs. And so I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of um a disconnect for big two editors where they're
Mhm.
just like, yeah, but he makes books about dogs. They're also not hiring, like Dav Pilkey to to do Marvel and DC comics. So um but yeah, he sort of put a bug in Darren's ear, and Darren reached out and we started talking, and he said, we're interested in having you write the thing. And I every time they've come to me, it's sort of been, or Darren specifically, it's sort of been like, we already want you to do this thing. And it's so weird for me coming from, a couple of years ago where it's so much aspiring and
Yeah.
and like pitching and sending portfolios and stuff. And so I'm always like 4 emails in before I'm like, wait, do I have this job? So but the thing was like, he had read Local Man, and he sort of thought like I would have a good take on Ben's voice. And I think he was right. And we just sort of like we get along really well,
Mm.
me and the editorial on these books, and so we just sort of bounce ideas back and forth until something comes out of it, and that's sort of where the thing came from. I pitched a bunch of stories, they liked this one, and we sort of started building it, and now we're almost done. Justin just sent in issue 4 thumbnails, and then I've got to write issue 5 by next week sometime. So we're rounding the corner, and it's
Right.
been a long process. We've been working on it since October.
Yeah, wow. So if someone hasn't picked up issue 1 of the thing, what was kind of like your elevator pitch that you landed on of this is the story you wanted to tell?
Yeah, it's a street level Ben Grimm story, where he gets wrapped up in some old, back home business. He gets wrapped up in some Yancey Street business. It's his bully from when he was a kid, comes to him. This is a very long elevator ride. His
It's
bully
okay. We're going
from
to the top. We're going to the top floor. It's fine.
that's right. His bully from when he was a kid shows up and says like, "Hey, I need help," and he says no, and he's like, "It's for my sister," and he says, "Okay." Um, and and so it's this sort of like street level story, personal story,
Mm.
but what comes out of it is the thing that this guy's wrapped up in has uh, ties to the whole Marvel universe, and so it ends up that the thing gets a bounty put out on his head, and every villain in the Marvel universe sort of comes after him trying to collect this $10 million bounty. Um, and so what it ends up being is just a story about the thing and about like inside the thing and outside, like what
Mm.
his conflicts are, and then also just clobbering the shit out of supervillains, one after the other. This issue 4 is, um, I mean, every issue has big fights. That was sort of the assignment when we landed on the when we were pitching the stories. The editor was like, "CB likes it when there's fighting," it's easier to get stuff passed, get stuff approved if there's just a bunch of fighting in it. And I was like, "Well, that sounds great." So it's been really fun, and having an artist who draws such kinetic stuff
Mm.
like Justin Mason, it's been really fun to just write all this fighting and have uh, just a ton of clobbering and punching, and then having it be, characters that I've grown up loving or characters that I've always thought were silly, and then just getting him to punch them or whip them around. It's been really fun. I'm excited for people to see it. The first one has a little bit of fighting, but every issue we sort of stack on more and more
Okay.
fighting until the end. It's like a big, it's a big showdown.
Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned, Justin's art. I just had finished up reading Sentinels that he did with Alex Pagnodel. Love the art in there. Like, and so getting to see this in a, because it's a different style in that, it's got to be fun for you to like to kind of like, okay, here's the envision, especially when you're incorporating so many different villains and characters to say like, here's what I want to do. Let's see your take on this character. And so
Mhm.
like when you see that, it's got to be cool moments like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's just got such a bouncy, kinetic style. And the story that I'm telling, it sort of balances out the story a lot because um, I sort of write thing as like more morose than sort of
Mm.
like the friendly, like the just everything's fine, big brother, Uncle Ben uh, character. And so he's a little bit more this man, this monster. And he's just trying to, he just is sleepy and just wants to get back to his bed and just wants to go back to, you know, being left alone. And so to have the other side of that be the artwork is, he's drawing his expressions perfectly and he's drawing his acting perfectly, but also like it just has a bounce to it. And Alex Sinclair's colors just have like a bounce to them. And so it just feels like a fun comic, which is, I mean, so many of the ones I do are, a cat's gonna die, or like, I mean, Uncanny Valley is a really fun comic, but they're also, a lot of them about emotions and
Right.
about, family stuff. And this one, even though it has that stuff in it, just being that it's my first solo Marvel comic is, I'm very happy that it's just so much punching and so much, I don't know if it'll do the trick of like leading people back to my other stuff. Like if you read Thing and
Right.
then you read, Stray Dogs, you're gonna be like, what is this? Where did this come from? But it is fun to play in that world.
Yeah, I've had that sometimes where it's like an artist like has said that like, oh, I wrote this one comic, and people go back and like, oh, this is completely different than everything else. So like, it's always funny
Yeah,
when you hear that. You're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. For
yeah.
you, like, you know, you also got to write in this character, who am saying is going to be the Marvel's universe's Baby Yoda. You got Herbie in here, like.
Is oh, that's interesting. I didn't even are people anticipating big Herbie things?
I don't know. I just he once he showed up in the trailer, I'm like, this is Marvel's going for a Baby Yoda here because I feel like he just has that vibe about him.
Yeah, very cute. Yeah, I guess they haven't, besides like Jarvis, they haven't really had droids,
Yeah.
you know, in Marvel. That's fun. Yeah, Herbie shows up in my book in a very circuitous way. He was not initially in the pitch or even in like the first draft of the script. Um, but because of how this where this story is set in the timeline, it started out very amorphous and vague. They just said, um, we want this to be like they call it like evergreen
Mhm.
John Byrne era Fantastic Four time. Like they have the white collars,
Such good
it's
suits.
not Bill Kirby, but it's not just right after Kirby, but it's sort of like when they were sort of like in their prime. And so we just sort of placed it back then, and then that means that a lot of the villains that you see are also these sort of Bronze Age villains.
Mm.
And you don't see, there's a bounty out on someone's head, but the Deadpool's not in it, or you know.
Right.
Um, but the more we sort of like zeroed in on timeline and place and stuff, and then that's when I feel like Tom Brevoort gets activated, and he's like, well, if this is happening right here, then this wouldn't be possible. So you have to figure out a fix for this. That's sort of been
Yeah.
the interesting difference between this job and all my other jobs is like I'm operating in this place where there's a dense continuity, and there's somebody keeping an eye out to make sure that I don't step on it. And so Herbie was originally just the guy just snuck into the Baxter building and knocked on his door, and Tom Brevoort was like, you cannot get up to the Thing's apartment without having a special belt that the elevator knows that you're okay to go up in the elevator. And then so we were going to use the Fantastic Four around that time had like a robot receptionist, and I was like, well, we'll use her. And then he's like, well, she doesn't have feet, so she could not get up there. She's just sort of like tied to the reception desk. And I was like, well, what if there's like a track that goes along the wall? And he's like, there is not one. And so it was like a long back and forth. And eventually they were like, we know Herbie's in the movie, so why don't we just use Herbie? And I said, that sounds great. So
Nice.
Herbie shows up in issue 1. Uh, I haven't written issue 5 yet, but he is most of the rest of the time the Thing is out of the building, and
Yeah.
the Fantastic Four is off doing other stuff. So
How
maybe we'll get more Herbie.
maybe. Well, so how does you mentioned this is a lot different approach, right? With just you have so much continuity that you have to deal with and trying to figure out the placing and stuff. How much research do you do of like digging back into the Fantastic Four or just going with your own headcanon? Because I know you want to respect those, what's happened before, but you still don't want that to influence the story you want to tell, I assume. So like how do you kind of balance that of researching the prep for something like this?
It's different for every project and different for depending on uh what, like the Thing is a character that has thousands of comic books to.
Mhm.
If I was gonna do like if I was like I'm gonna research everything about the Thing, I'm gonna read. I used to hear about like Bendis is going to take over X-Men, and he would just read all the X-Men, and I was like, that's a it's like a 5-year project, that's not I couldn't understand, I could not fathom how you could put that together. And so, but I just sort of pick out, I read the stuff that I remember being my favorite stuff.
Hmm.
I'll read like key stuff, or like I'll sort of look up, like what are the ones I need to read. I'll just do a lot of Googling around and just go, like I've read the Lee Kirby stuff. I've read some of the John Byrne. I've read definitely the Wade. I've read some of the Hickman, like, so it's just sort of like going back in, picking out, uh, and then I'll just be like, sometimes my favorite creators will have done an issue or something. I'll go like, well, how did they do it? Or like
Hmm.
Juggernaut shows up and I'm like, well, I want to revisit the X-Force Spider-Man crossover with Juggernaut, and so I went back in and I looked at that, and then when I'm writing that stuff, I'm sending notes to Justin, just like, we can do the coolest Juggernaut ever, but this is what we have to beat. We have to beat,
Yeah.
Tom McFarlane in his prime.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the research is a big part of it, but I definitely, also because it's only a 5-issue thing, like I'm not like Bendis reading all the X-Men, he's strapping in to do like a,
Right.
several year long project where he's doing, X-Men and Uncanny X-Men and crossovers and stuff. So this is just one story. I feel like I'm also supported by having Tom Brevoort and having the, Darren and the editors at Marvel, who just go, yeah, you don't use that character. This could not happen at this time. And then I'll just be like, oh yeah, that's right. There was a secret war. I was,
You have your own with Tom, you have your own backlog catalog of just like, I'll use you for research.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, I feel like that's a position that he's very comfortable in. He likes being that guy.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's not like just reading my drafts and then just going like, this idiot. He didn't read every issue of Fantastic Four.
You were supposed to read everything comic that came out before this.
Buddy, we're paying you nearly $2,000 a script. We expect you to have read all the Fantastic Four.
So good. Yeah, I want to respect your time because, like we said, you're busy. I mean, I'm even looking at stuff like you're still doing cover art and stuff like that coming out with. I saw some preview covers of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees the second season.
Mhm.
You got some of those, and like, what else do you got coming out that you can talk about?
Let's see what is announced. Me and Tim Seeley wrote the Marvel swimsuit special,
Yeah.
which is a bizarre dream come true. But I mean, for both of us, it was definitely a thing where he always does this. He emails me and he goes, "We shouldn't do this because we don't have time, but we cannot pass this up." And Marvel had come to him and said, "Hey, we need somebody to write the swimsuit special." And whenever they think crass, like sexualized comics, they go, "Let's get Tim." But he said, he was working full time at the time as a teacher, and he was like, "I don't have time, but if Tony can pitch in, then we can do it." And so we wrote that thing, and it's a ton of fun, and it's basically the same as the old Marvel swimsuit specials, where it's a bunch of pinups and, like all your favorite superheroes, made to look sexy and like they're at the beach or whatever. But this time, for whatever reason, they decided they also wanted to do story pages and have like a sequential part to it. So um, the art is by Nick Bradshaw, who is one of my favorites, who's also just like a great dude. And we really wrote a sort of like rollicking Marvel Universe adventure. And so the idea that we're going to have like a top Marvel guy, bringing that to the page is very exciting. We're excited to haven't seen any artwork yet, so it's exciting to sort of have that dangling out there, something that one day they're just going to be like, here it is, do a lettering draft.
Yeah.
Um, so that's announced, and then I am doing covers for Beneath the Trees. I'm doing the B covers for all 6 issues of that new arc. I read the first one,
Hmm.
and it's really great. Have you read it?
I read the first one of the new arc too. I'm
Yeah,
excited for it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I wasn't sure. I had talked to Patrick about it. I ran into him out here in LA, and February, and we sort of like got to chat a little bit about it. And so I knew that it was heading in a cool direction, but just reading it and sort of like having it feel so different and being back in that world
Yeah.
uh felt perfect to me. It was just like, this is exactly what you want for a sequel to that book. So that's exciting. And I have like two more of those I need to do. I think I've got the first four finished. Um, and then me and Celie are working on another image book that's not announced yet, and that'll be a mini series, hopefully end of this year or early
Okay.
next year. And then I have another Marvel thing that'll sort of come after the thing, but that's also not announced yet. So I'm busy. We're just over here cranking on Feral and just about to wrap up Uncanny Valley, and then everything else is starting up, and it's an interesting time for sure. There's a ton of stuff. Every day I have a different thing to jump over to. That's not even counting like the weird little freelance, cover gigs. I'm doing covers for Bad Idea, or I'm doing, just like stuff just pops up, and I have a hard time saying no because I bought this expensive house, and so, so I'm just doing everything.
So, well, gang, go out, check out the thing. If you have not been staying up to date with Feral, hop on board. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see the closure here of Uncanny Valley. It should be
Yeah,
a good time.
you specifically are going to dig it. I can tell. Let's, if you want, I know we usually do a little bit of time in between these, but if you dig it and you want to talk about it, I would love to come back and talk,
Yeah,
like do a full Uncanny Valley, like,
let's do it. Let's do a full spoiler Uncanny Valley talk.
yeah, would love to. That would be
So,
great. Maybe we can get Dave to pop in or,
yeah,
whatever.
that'd be great. I'd love
Yep.
to. We'll make that happen hopefully. So,
The
with that
most
being,
weird
yeah,
that I've been on this show.
Tony, where can people follow along with you?
Oh, I'm on everything. I'm just at Tony Fleece, Fleecs. I'm on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm on Blue Sky and Threads. I'm still on X, even though it's just like bots over there.
Yep.
Every day I have 10 new direct messages from somebody I don't know that either wants to sleep with me or it has an interesting investment idea for me. So, but yeah, I'm on all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a website, tonyfleece.com. And if you want, you can go there and buy cover art or buy original art. Um, and I have a mailing list there where I let people know when there's new stuff coming out. But I'm hard to miss. I'm all over the place.
Right. So, well, gang, with that being said, check out Tony, follow those links, add these books to your poll. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.